So, Dr. Weimbs, in talking about animal model and clinical research, lots of PKD patients have read several papers regarding both the animal research done at your lab at UCSB, as well as been energized by the work at Roman Muller's lab done in Germany on the ketogenic approach. Could you take us through the basics and how these studies might provide hope for healthier kidneys for the PKD and CKD communities?
In my lab at UCSB, where I'm a professor, director research lab, we've been focusing on polycystic kidney disease for over 20 years. And we have started by researching many different underlying molecular mechanisms, signaling pathways, and so on, always with an eye on finding the next molecular target for drug therapy, until we stumbled on these mechanisms that are actually can be influenced by dietary interventions very strongly. So that happened in the last few years. So here's a beautiful campus in Santa Barbara. 2 key papers were published from my lab, both actually in 2019. In this paper here, we discovered the role of these microcrystals, such as calcium oxalate microcrystals, that can form in kidneys and can actually dramatically worsen the progression of polycystic kidney disease. And we found that there's actually a fairly straightforward way of preventing those microcrystals, which is treatment with citrate or citric acid. So these are all animal studies, of rats and mice, and we saw very dramatic effects. In this other paper here, we found that the metabolic state of what's called ketosis is highly beneficial, again, in mouse, rat, and actually also cat models in this paper here of polycystic kidney disease, where we found very dramatic effects, stopping the progression of PKD and even causing partial reversal of PKD in these animal models. And then this led us to the idea to just combine these 2 mechanisms. So we can combine citrate and we can combine this, what's called the exogenous ketone, beta-hydroxybutyrate. And that's kind of the underlying science underneath KetoCitra. In fact, we recently published a paper with this combination where we could show that the combination of citrate and beta-hydroxybutyrate has these synergistic effects, meaning that they kind of like even help each other out and give us even more of a benefit. So these are some of the animal studies. Currently, we have a lot of what's called preclinical studies going on in the lab, where we're trying to understand the details of these mechanisms and why things actually work that they work. Also, actually in my lab, we have started to do clinical studies. This paper here was published from my lab, a journal called Clinical Kidney Journal, where we did essentially a case series study looking at people with polycystic kidney disease that had already implemented ketogenic metabolic therapy on their own, reported various effects on both the health and well-being, as well as on their kidney function. The data were just stunning, where most patients actually reported beneficial effects on kidney function, on pain levels, and so on. So this was kind of the first clinical study with ketogenic metabolic therapy in polycystic kidney disease. More recent paper we published on the Renew program that you know all about, Kelly, of course, because you have been running it. This paper essentially describes the initial pilot study of the Renew program, which combines KetoCitra with dietary interventions. I think it's a really terrific program, actually very successful. So lots of people, after this paper was published, many additional people have gone through the program, and we're actually putting together another paper on the outcomes of these participants.
I think it's important to note, Dr. Weimbs, that the research out of the Weimbs lab, the Renew program, and of course the KetoCitra product provide both research-based actionables and hope to those suffering with PKD. And I can't tell you how many times I hear how much from participants of the Renew program or other PKD patients that I talk to about the word hope, that you are not only giving answers, but you're providing both hope and solutions to these people.
Yeah, speaking about hope, so animal studies are great, and they're usually first and actually a very important step of getting new leads on new therapies, new treatment, new ways of managing diseases, and so on. But then, of course, comes a point where you have to do clinical studies in people that are affected by the condition. And I already mentioned our previous studies, but a new one that just came out a few months ago is this sort of like landmark paper. The study was led by Roman Müller, University of Cologne in Germany. I was part of the study and helped with the initial concept there and the design of the study. Also, Jacob Torres from my lab contributed there. This study, I would say, caused big splash in the field, because up to this point, people didn't really believe that ketogenic ketogenic metabolic therapy could be beneficial in something like polycystic kidney disease. Many nephrologists were very skeptical, but this study was, I think, really well done. It's a randomized controlled trial, which is the top level of evidence in clinical research. So patients with PKD were divided into 3 groups: control group, no change in diet; a ketogenic diet group; a water fasting group where patients were on a 3-day water fast once per month. The outcomes that we looked for in the study were things like feasibility and safety, of course, but also we looked for efficacy, meaning that we looked for beneficial effects on kidney function and some other outcomes. To our amazement, there were actually very concrete results already coming out of the study. And I just want to highlight a couple of pieces of data here from the study. I think the greatest surprise was that there was actually a statistically significant benefit on kidney function in the ketogenic diet group. Most people wouldn't have expected this. I sort of had a hunch we might see this, and we did. It's a little bit complicated to look at these graphs, but you can see in the ketogenic diet arm, that's the red group here, there's actually an increase in the level of kidney function measured by creatinine-based eGFR, whereas there's no change in the control group. Also in the water fasting group, there was actually no change. And this increase turned out to be statistically significant. So this was not a random finding, but appeared to be clearly due to the dietary intervention. And results were confirmed with a different marker that indicates kidney function by a different mechanism, and that's called cystatin C. Same result. Ketogenic diet led to an actual improvement in kidney function, which is really unheard of. Prior to this study, there had never been a clinical study where any intervention actually led to an improvement in kidney function. So that was also not expected, because PKD is considered to be a relentlessly progressive disease that only goes in one direction, which is getting worse. Some other interesting results: there was a trend towards an improvement in total kidney volume. So what you want is that these big polycystic kidneys might potentially get smaller. So this did not meet statistical significance. So this could still be a chance finding, but at least trend went into the right direction, and that in the ketogenic diet group, the average size of these kidneys actually, if anything, got smaller rather than bigger. There was this study run by Roman Müller and his team, a terrific study. Of course, everyone will say, oh, this is only 3 months. What happens after a year? What are the long-term outcomes? That's something we have been focused on over the last 3 or 4 years at Santa Barbara Nutrients, to line up a portfolio of clinical studies that we have been working on with numerous academic investigators. So those are all key opinion leaders in the field of nephrology research and polycystic kidney disease research, and they are in top academic institutions. You can see Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins University, and so on. Essentially came to us and we figured out plans for testing. Just these studies here where KetoCitra is sort of administered together with ketogenic dietary changes. In some of the studies, it's just KetoCitra by itself. But as you can see, these studies are, of course, also long-term, which also means will take time until results can be presented and published in scientific publications. So I'm very excited about all these studies and looking very much forward to all these outcomes. So Kelly, as you know, clinical research is extremely expensive, and it's mostly done in the context of drug research by big pharmaceutical companies. A little company like Santa Barbara Nutrients selling a very inexpensive product compared to, drugs can't really be expected to have the funds to ever do clinical studies like we're doing. So where's the money all coming from? We're actually very lucky that we have investors in the company that are extremely dedicated to finding better management or treatments for polycystic kidney disease. So that has been a great help. Are there other ways you can think of how people actually with PKD could get involved and help speed up the progress of our research program?
So we are all really inspired by all of the clinical research initiatives underway at Santa Barbara Nutrients, especially with so many prestigious and reputable institutions. We are really excited to announce that there is an opportunity to make tax-deductible contributions to support this research through our partner, the Venn Foundation. So below this video, you can actually find instructions on contributing. It's important to know that at Santa Barbara Nutrients, we are providing hope to the PKD community with an action plan for science-backed research.